Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that digs through stacks of sources, articles, research, you name it, and we bring the key takeaways straight to you.
That's right.
Today, we're jumping into something that feels really personal, but actually has huge ripples in the big worlds of finance and law. We're talking about your names.
Your name sounds simple.
Exactly.
Right?
But what if that name, the one on your birth certificate, the one that says who you are, what if it's more than just a label? What if it's like a powerful tool? Something with real legal and financial clout.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine your name, not just as, what people call you, but as a kind of foundational asset inside these complex systems that run things. That's the surprising reality we're going to unpack today.
It really is a mind bender, something most people just, never think about. So our mission today in this deep dive is to unpack all these connections.
Okay.
We're going to look at how your name carries the significant legal and financial weight, and then how the court system, maybe surprisingly, can take that value and turn it into a recognized financial instrument.
A financial instrument. We definitely need to define that.
Oh, absolutely. We'll cover what exactly that means. Then we'll break down, the practical side. How do these things actually get turned into cash?
Right.
Who are the main players involved in this system? It's probably a bigger group than you think.
I bet.
And maybe most importantly, we'll talk about how you, the individual whose name is right in the middle of all this, how you might actually benefit. Even in weird situations, like if your data gets used without you saying, okay.
Yeah, that unauthorized use angle sounds really important. So our goal here is to kind of pull back the curtain on these mechanisms that are usually hidden, give you a shortcut to understanding this fascinating little corner of finance and law that, it ties directly back to you.
Exactly. Let's get into it.
The unexpected value of your name.
Okay, so let's start right there, challenging that basic idea. Your name is way more than just a tag. We use it all the time, casually, but institutionally, it's like the bedrock of your legal identity.
It really is.
Think about that name on your birth certificate, your ID card. It's not just ink on paper. It's a creation recognized by the government. It forms the basis, legally speaking, of a legal person or even an estate. That's the starting point for its value.
That's absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
And that fundamental piece carries enormous weight. I mean, think about just signing your name. Seems simple, right?
Yeah, you do it every day.
But when you sign as yourself, personally, you're bound by that agreement. It directly affects your liability.
Okay.
But what if you sign as, say, an agent for a company or an authorized representative? Well, then that liability might shift. It might be limited to the company you're representing.
Ah, right. The capacity you sign in matters.
Hugely.
Mm.
And even the circumstances around the signature are critical.
Mm-hmm.
Like signing under duress, or putting your name on a form that was already filled out before you even saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Those things can open up serious challenges, serious objections in court. Procedural ones, equitable ones. It's not just what you sign, it's the how, the where, the capacity.
So the simple act of signing, even just having your name exist in these systems, isn't only about identifying you. It's about creating a legal and potentially financial commitment.
Precisely.
And it's fascinating how deeply that's built into everything. Courts, agencies, they're not just glancing at the signature. They're looking at who signed, how they signed, what authority they actually had.
Yeah.
And critically, did using that name in that specific way actually trigger some kind of legal or financial event? It really makes you stop and think about the power packed into your own signature.
It really does. You see, in administrative systems, judicial ones, financial ones, your name acts as a kind of trust identifier.
Trust identifier.
It's the essential piece needed to start a case file, to record a claim, to establish legal standing. And here's the really crucial bit.
Yeah.
In a lot of these situations, your name isn't just identifying you. It acts as the actual property from which obligations or maybe benefits can flow.
Property. Wow.
Think about your name on a loan application or a passport. Seems like just everyday stuff.
Totally normal.
But those acts are deeply embedded in this huge, interconnected financial and legal structure. The systems behind the scenes track your identity, and then they basically convert that identity into a traceable, data-keyed financial record.
That's a huge realization. My name, my identity, treated like a form of property in these systems. So who are the big players using this property, and why do they need it? It sounds like it's much bigger than just my bank down the street.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Several key types of institutions are constantly accessing and using your legal name. First up, courts.
Oh, okay. It makes sense.
They use your name for dockets,
Okay.
Those are the official public records of all the legal stuff happening in a case. And for case bonds, financial guarantees tied to legal actions, your name helps them track everything efficiently, link the right people to the right case, manage the whole flow.
Right, keeping the legal wheels turning. And banks, obviously. We know they need our names for KYC, know your customer rules. That's about verifying identity, stopping crime.
Yes, but there's definitely a deeper layer there. Beyond basic KYC, banks use your name to make payment systems work, allowing money to actually flow through the economy. But what's even more significant, maybe even a bit surprising, is how they can use your name in collateralization.
Collateralization? How does that work with just a name?
Well, under specific banking regulations, like, say, Federal Reserve operating circulars, your identity can actually be used in value processing. There are agreements, like borrower and custody agreements, where banks in certain situations can essentially index your identity or use it in connection with valuable collateral they hold or manage.
Wait, really? So my name, or the legal entity it represents, could be part of the framework supporting a bank's financial operations?
In specific contexts, yes. It means your legal identity can be part of the structure that underpins how banks manage value and assets.
That's substantial. Okay, so courts, banks. What about government agencies? They must be in this mix too.
Absolutely. Government agencies use your name for a whole range of things. Dispersing benefits, think Social Security, unemployment, processing tax claims, even initiating enforcement actions.
Right, the whole spectrum.
And across all these players, courts, banks, government agencies, the point is, your name isn't just sitting there as a label. It's constantly creating and expanding that traceable, data-keyed financial record we talked about. This record lets them track and manage financial obligations and benefits tied directly to you. It forms this digital footprint that defines your legal and financial life within these big institutions.
Okay, so all this information connected to my name, where is it all kept? It sounds like it must be scattered across a huge interconnected network.
It is, and that interconnection is really the key. Your name lives in lots of different databases, creating this big web of information. We're talking civil registries, the official records of births, marriages, deaths,
Your basic.
national ID databases, central hubs for ID documents, and of course, judicial and administrative dockets, those formal records of every legal and administrative case, making your involvement traceable.
So the official paper trail of our legal lives, more or less.
Pretty much. And then, obviously, banking, KYC files, and collateral processing files. These are the detailed internal records banks keep to check customer identities and manage their assets.
Right.
Now, what links all these different systems together, what lets different agencies access and cross-reference information tied to your name, are those unique identifiers.
Like my Social Security number.
Exactly. Your SSN, or an employer identification number, EIN if you have a business, or a taxpayer identification number, TIN. These identifiers act like keys, locking your name's central role into this web of financial and legal traceability across countless databases.
So every time one of those numbers is used, it connects back to my name and reinforces this whole digital footprint.
Precisely. It cements its role in shaping your whole financial and legal profile within these interconnected systems.
From name to financial instrument.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly for part two. And this is maybe the most intriguing bit of this whole deep dive. How does my name, this identifier that anchors my legal and financial self, actually get transformed into something tangible, something tradable, like a financial instrument?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
But first, before we get into that magic trick, let's nail down what exactly is a financial instrument. Because I think for a lot of us, that term just sounds like Wall Street jargon.
That's a great question. And yeah, let's make it simple. Basically, a financial instrument is a legal contract, a contract that represents monetary value.
Okay, a contract worth money.
Right. Think of it as a formal, legally recognized agreement between parties, and it inherently has a recognized worth. The really crucial part is that it can be traded.
Traded, like
Yeah.
bought and sold.
Exactly. Bought, sold, exchanged on financial markets. And fundamentally, it creates a financial asset for one side, and at the same time, a financial liability or maybe an equity stake for the other side. These things are absolutely basic to how capital moves, how value gets transferred in any economy.
So it's not just paper. It's a legal agreement that's worth money and can change hands. What are the key things that make something qualify as a financial instrument?
There are a few main characteristics. First, its value comes from a contractual right,
Right.
meaning it's a legally enforceable right to get cash or maybe ownership equity or even another financial instrument down the road. Second, it has tradability. Like we said, it can be bought, sold, traded on markets. That gives it liquidity, how easily it can turn into cash.
Right, liquidity.
And third, even though it can represent a lot of value, it's mostly intangible. It doesn't necessarily have a physical form, even if there's a paper certificate or an electronic record. The real value is in the legal promise underneath, not the paper itself.
Got it. So it's the right to something valuable, not the valuable thing itself necessarily, and you can trade that right. Can you give us some examples, like different categories or types?
Sure. We can break them down into a few key groups. First, you've got equity instruments. These represent ownership in something, like a company.
Stocks and shares.
Exactly. Stocks, shares, you own a share, you own a tiny piece of the company. Second, debt instruments. These represent borrowed money that has to be paid back, usually with interest.
Like bonds.
Bonds are a perfect example. IOUs from governments or companies. Also things like debentures or just a straightforward bank loan. Third, derivative instruments. These get their value from something else, an underlying asset like a stock or oil or an interest rate.
Futures and options.
Futures contracts, options contracts, yeah. They let people bet on or protect themselves against future price changes. And finally, cash equivalents. These are instruments that are basically cash or can be turned into cash really quickly and easily. Think checks, bank deposits.
Okay, that breakdown helps a lot. But how does something like just a promise on paper fit in? That sounds so basic, not like some complex thing traded on a market.
But this is where it gets really fundamental and shows you a cornerstone of modern finance.
Yeah.
A simple written promise signed saying you'll pay a specific amount on a future date. That becomes what's legally called a promissory note.
A promissory note. Okay.
And it's not just some casual IOU. It's a legally binding and enforceable document. Because a court will enforce it, it automatically creates monetary value.
How so?
Well, think about it. If I write and sign a note promising to pay you $1,000 in 30 days, you now have a legal right, a contractual claim to that $1,000. That right is officially an asset for you, and it's a liability for me.
So I could take that piece of paper, that promissory note, and maybe sell it to someone else for cash right now before the 30 days are up.
Right.
Just because that promise is legally solid.
Exactly. That's the tradability we talked about. You could sell or transfer that note to a third party, probably for a little less than $1,000. That's the discount to get cash immediately.
Okay.
And this is the critical point. The real value of these promises, whether it's a simple promissory note or a complex bond, lies in their legal certainty, their enforceability in court. That's what transforms a piece of paper or an electronic entry into a valuable, tradable financial asset. The legal system is the bedrock.
Okay, I think I've got a good handle on what a financial instrument is now. So
Yeah.
let's get to the really mind-bending part. How does the court system, the place you go for justice, actually create these financial instruments using your name? This feels like where the abstract theory hits reality.
This is exactly where it all comes together, showing that hidden power of your name in the legal system. It starts pretty simply. When a legal matter is registered in court under your name.
Okay, just filing the case.
Right. Now, that initial filing, that claim, isn't automatically a financial instrument itself, but it represents a potential future financial benefit for the person making the claim, the claimant, if they eventually win.
So it's like a potential asset. Its value isn't fixed yet.
Exactly. The value is uncertain until there's a judgment, but the process has been kicked off.
So filing the case with my name is like planting a seed. The court case is the process that might make that seed grow into something valuable, a real asset.
That's a great way to put it. The actual creation of the financial instrument happens if the court rules in your favor, as the claimant, and grants an award.
Like damages.
Damages, or maybe a court-approved settlement agreement, or a formal judgment ordering payment. That court award creates the financial instrument. It's not potential anymore. It becomes a solid legal obligation for the losing side to pay a specific amount or hand over assets.
And for the winner.
For the recipient, that obligation instantly turns into a definite financial asset. It's a clear, legally enforceable right to get funds. On their accounting books, it often shows up as an account receivable, basically money that's officially owed to them and they expect to collect it.
So that judgment paper isn't just proof you're owed money. It is a financial asset, something that can be used, traded, maybe even sold. That completely changes how I see a court decision.
That's the core idea. It's a legally enforceable claim to future cash. And your name gets tied to a financial instrument in these broader ways Whenever a court case, maybe a labor dispute referral, or any claim is officially filed using your name as the basis.
Right.
And furthermore, if that claim ends up resulting in an enforceable judgment, or maybe a formal trust is set up, or some kind of bonded obligation is created, your name is now directly linked to a recognized financial instrument.
Right.
And this even extends back to what we talked about with banks. When they act as custodians or processors and use your name in connection with value or collateral, essentially indexing your identity for financial instruments under those banking rules, that's another way your name gets woven into this financial fabric.
This is really opening my eyes.
Yeah.
So beyond just getting a direct check from a court award, how does the name or the instrument created from it actually generate money within these big systems?
There are a few key ways it happens. The most obvious is through those direct judicial awards or settlements managed by the court. When the court says pay up, that's direct cash generation.
Makes sense.
But it also generates value, or money, by acting as an index for collateralized financial instruments, especially under certain laws, like we mentioned, that let institutions use a person's name or identity as a basis for processing value. Your legal identity can essentially backstop other financial transactions.
Right.
And also, your name acts as a trigger for those KYC-validated transactions we discussed, or for eligibility checks linked to releasing funds. So when your identity is verified through Know Your Customer procedures, that can unlock payments or benefits that are then tied to you.
Okay.
All these routes show how your name, within these institutional frameworks, translates into actual financial movement and real value.
Converting financial instruments to cash.
Okay, that is a lot to take in. So you've got this thing, this financial instrument. Maybe it's a promissory note, maybe a bond, maybe a court judgment that was created fundamentally using your name. Now for the big question. How do you actually turn that piece of paper or that legal right into cold, hard cash?
Which brings us neatly to part 3, converting financial instruments to cash. Where do we start with monetizing these promises to pay?
Right, the practical side. Let's start with the general ways, the most common methods for turning these promises into cash. The absolute simplest way, obviously, is scheduled payments.
Just wait till the money.
Pretty much. If it's a promissory note, you just wait for the debtor, the person who owes the money, to make the payments according to the terms laid out in the note until it's all paid off. It's the patient route.
But, what if you need the money sooner? Or you just don't want the hassle of chasing payments for months or years? That seems pretty common.
Very common. And that's exactly where selling the promissory note or the claim comes in. It's a really powerful option. The person holding the note can sell it to a third party. Who buys these things?
Could be a company that specializes in buying notes, maybe an individual investor looking for a return, or even another financial institution. The buyer will look closely at the note's value.
How do they figure that out?
They'll assess things like the remaining balance, the interest rate, the borrower's credit history, how likely are they to actually pay, and their payment track record so far. They're basically weighing the risk against the potential reward.
And I'm guessing you don't get the full amount written on the note, right? There must be a catch for getting cash up front.
You're exactly right. Notes are almost always sold at a discount. The original holder gets less than the face value.
How much less?
That discount could be anywhere from, say, 10% to 35%, maybe even more if it's an unsecured note, meaning there's no collateral backing it up. The discount pays the buyer for taking on the risk that the borrower might default, and also for the time value of money.
Time value of money.
Yeah, the basic idea that money you have today is worth more than the same amount promised in the future. So once they agree on a price, they do the paperwork, sign a sales agreement, transfer ownership, and then the borrower gets notified to send payments to the new owner. It's a clean handoff of that income stream.
So it's like selling your future income for a lump sum now. Is promissory note discounting basically the same thing, or is it slightly different?
It's very close, often used the same way, but there can be a slight difference, especially when banks are involved. Promissory note discounting usually means transferring the note to a financial institution, like your bank. They give you cash right away, which is the face value minus their fee or interest.
Okay.
The key difference here sometimes involves recourse.
Recourse.
Yeah. With recourse means if the borrower stops paying, the bank can come back to you, the original holder, to get the money. You're still on the hook. Without recourse means the bank takes on all the risk of default. This is really useful for businesses or people who need cash fast and don't want to wait for the note to mature.
Got it. With or without recourse determines who carries the risk if things go south. Now, what if the payments just stop, despite having the note, despite the legal backing? What then?
Okay, Then you shift into enforcement and collection. Usually starts with formal demand letters sent to the borrower, basically saying, hey, you owe this, pay up, or else.
Or else what?
Or else you might hire a lawyer and file a lawsuit to get a court order enforcing the note. Another option is selling the defaulted debt to a collection agency. You'll get even less money for it than usually just pennies on the dollar because the agency is taking on a tough collection job. And finally, sometimes you might even be able to use the promissory note itself as collateral to get another loan, borrowing against its future, though maybe uncertain, value.
Okay, so those are the general ways. Now, let's zero in on those specific court-created instruments, the judgments, the awards we talked about. How do you really squeeze the cash out of those?
Well, the main, most direct way to use a court judgment you've won is to enforce it and collect the debt. If the debtor doesn't just pay up, you have legal tools.
Like what?
Things like wage garnishment, where you get a portion of their paycheck, putting liens on their property, like their house or car, or even, under court order, seizing their assets to pay off the judgment debt.
Sounds serious. And can you sell a court judgment? Like you can sell a promissory note? Seems like a stranger thing to sell.
You absolutely can. It works very similarly. A court judgment can be sold to a third party for a lump sum payment. Buyers could be collection agencies again, or maybe litigation funders or other investors who specialize in this.
And the benefit is immediate cash.
Exactly. You get cash now, minus that discount, of course. And the buyer takes over all the hassle and risk of actually collecting the money from the debtor. It's quite common for people or businesses who want the cash without going through the potentially long and frustrating collection process.
Okay. And what about litigation funding? I hear that term thrown around. Sounds a bit like something from a legal drama. How does it work in the real world?
Oh, it's very real and becoming more common. Litigation funding is where a third-party company gives a litigant, the person suing or being sued, money up front.
To pay for the lawsuit.
Yeah, usually to cover legal fees, expert witnesses, court costs, things like that. In return, the funder gets a percentage of whatever money is recovered later through a settlement or a court award.
Ah, so they're investing in the lawsuit itself.
Kind of, yeah. It allows people or companies to pursue strong cases they might not be able to afford otherwise. It helps level the playing field against opponents with deeper pockets.
That makes sense. What about structured settlements? How are they different from just getting a lump sum?
With a structured settlement, instead of getting all the money at once, the settlement amount is paid out in regular installments over time. Could be for a set number of years, or sometimes even for life.
Like an annuity.
Similar idea. It provides a guaranteed, steady income stream, which can be great for long-term financial planning. And depending on where you live, there can be tax advantages compared to getting one big taxable lump sum. It offers stability.
Okay, steady income versus lump sum. And you mentioned appeal financing and pre-settlement funding. Quick rundown on those.
Sure. Appeal financing is funding specifically to help someone pursue or defend an appeal after a judgment has already been made. Appeals can take ages and cost a lot, so this helps keep the fight going or helps monetize part of a judgment while it's tied up in the appeal process.
And pre-settlement.
Pre-settlement legal funding gives cash to plaintiffs before their case is even finished, before settlement or trial. It's usually for covering urgent living costs, medical bills, things that can't wait. The key thing here is it's often non-recourse.
Non-recourse,
meaning if you end up losing your case, you typically don't have to pay the money back. The funder takes the loss. They're betting on you winning.
Wow, okay. So this whole system relies on somebody actually wanting to buy these promises to pay, these judgments, these notes. Who are these buyers, the main players? And why on earth are they buying what boils down to a piece of paper or a legal claim? What's the angle for them?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question, really. Understanding who buys them and why reveals the whole structure of the financial system. Lots of different players are in this game because these legally enforceable claims to future money are a fundamental way to make returns and manage risk. First off, obviously, banks. They're constantly buying and holding debt instruments, notes, bills of exchange, bonds. They make money from the interest or from buying them at a discount. It's part of their core business of lending and managing money, and it helps keep their portfolios balanced and liquid.
Right. It's just another form of lending for them, basically diversifying how they put money to work.
Pretty much. Then you have the huge investment funds, mutual funds, pension funds, money market funds. They invest massive amounts in corporate and government bonds. Why? For diversification, steady returns, and especially for pension funds to make sure they have the money to pay retirees decades from now.
An insurance company, they're massive players too, right? Their whole business is about the long term.
Yeah, absolutely critical players. Insurance companies invest heavily in long-term bonds, government and corporate. They need that reliable, long-term income to make sure they can pay out insurance claims way down the line. It's about matching their future liabilities. Then you've got hedge funds and private equity firms. They tend to be more active traders of debt. They're looking for returns from interest, sure, but also from things like arbitrage spotting small price differences or buying up distressed debt, stuff that looks risky but might pay off big if they can turn it around.
And those factoring companies you mentioned, where do they fit?
Right. Factoring and finance companies have a very specific niche. They buy invoices, accounts receivable from businesses at a discount.
So a business that's waiting to get paid by a customer can sell that invoice.
Exactly. They get cash immediately, which helps their cash flow enormously. The factoring company then collects the full amount from the original customer later, and their profit is the difference. It's a very direct example of buying a promise to pay. Even central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the U.S., are huge buyers. They buy government debt and sometimes high-quality private debt as part of running the whole economy, managing the money supply, influencing interest rates, keeping the financial system stable.
So it's not just private companies chasing profits, it's governments managing the entire economic system using these instruments. That's massive.
It really is. Large corporations get involved, too. They might invest spare cash in things like commercial paper, short-term IOUs from other companies, or buy debt for strategic reasons, or just to manage their own cash efficiently. And, of course, individual investors, everyday people, can buy bonds, treasury bills, other debt, usually looking for safety, diversification, and a steady income stream.
And someone has to make the market work, right?
That's where securities dealers and traders come in. They're the middlemen, constantly buying and selling debt instruments. They provide liquidity, making sure there's always someone ready to buy or sell, which makes it easy for everyone else to trade. And they make their profit from the bid-ask spread, the small difference between buying and selling prices. So, bottom line, all these different entities, from the biggest banks to individuals, buy these promises to pay because they are legally solid claims to future cash. They are absolutely fundamental to finance, to investment, to how capital gets allocated around the world. They're the financial system's lifeblood.
The individuals benefit.
Yeah.
Especially in cases of unauthorized use.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground. We've seen how your name has this hidden value, how courts can turn that into financial instruments, and how those instruments get bought and sold in these huge networks. Now, the really crucial part, the question you've probably been thinking about: how do you, the individual, actually benefit from all this, especially when things get complicated, maybe even involving unauthorized use of your information? That brings us to part 4, the individual's benefit, especially in cases of unauthorized use.
Right. And just to quickly recap, we know individuals can benefit directly from things like court awards, settlements, using those strategies we just talked about, selling a judgment, getting litigation funding, structured settlement. Those are the straightforward paths if you're the one rightfully owed the money.
But what about those really messy situations like that scenario you brought up earlier? A bank gives your personal info to a union without your... Okay. The union uses it to file a court case. Maybe costs get awarded, possibly even against you, or maybe the union wins something, and you never agreed to any of it. That sounds like a total violation, a potential nightmare.
It's a very specific and, yes, deeply worrying scenario, but it perfectly illustrates a crucial point about the value and legal protections surrounding your personal data. In a situation like that, where your data is used without permission to create a financial outcome like a court award or in order to pay costs, you likely have very strong legal grounds to seek compensation, or even to claim a piece of the value that was generated.
How do you draw that line? Connect the dots between the unauthorized data use and the money that eventually pops out at the end. Where's the legal link, the causation?
The connection is pretty direct, actually. It's causative. Think about it. Without the unauthorized use of your personal data, that legal case could never have been started. Therefore, the court award or the costs order simply wouldn't exist. There's a clear chain. No unauthorized data use, no case, no award.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this immediately brings up a legal principle called unjust enrichment.
Unjust enrichment.
Yeah, it basically means someone shouldn't be allowed to profit unfairly at someone else's expense. In that example, the union could be seen as unjustly enriched. They got to benefit the award or cost directly because they used your data improperly without your consent. They profited from your data. You didn't agree. That's fundamentally unjust.
So it's not just about the money created. It's about the basic right to control your own information, your identity. Sounds like privacy violation is right at the core here.
Exactly. Using your personal data without permission is a direct violation of your fundamental data privacy rights. And these rights are protected by a whole raft of laws around the world: GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, many other national and state laws.
Right.
These laws specifically exist to give people like you legal ways to get compensation for damages when their privacy is violated. They make privacy not just an idea, but a legally enforceable right.
So if you're stuck in that kind of situation, what are the actual legal paths you could take to get compensation or claim what feels like it should be yours? Sounds like there might be a few different angles.
There definitely are several potential legal avenues. First, you could go after them using those data privacy laws. You could potentially file claims against both the bank for sharing your data without permission and the union for using it without permission.
What could you get from that?
Remedies often include monetary damages money to compensate you for the harm done, and also injunctive relief, which is a court order telling them to stop using your data improperly or to prevent it happening again. You might also have a specific data breach claim, mainly against the entity, like the bank, that let your information out in the first place. You could also have a direct claim against the union or whatever organization used your info without consent. And specifically, that unjust enrichment claim if they clearly benefited financially from it.
Okay. Are there other types of claims?
Yes, depending on where you are, you might be able to use what are called tort claims. Torts are basically civil wrongs separate from contract breaches where someone harms someone else. Examples could include invasion of privacy for intruding on your private affairs, or maybe misuse of private information, which is a specific legal wrong in some places.
And what if you had, like, an agreement with the bank about protecting your data?
That could significantly strengthen your case. You might be able to argue breach of confidence against the bank, saying they broke a duty to keep your information confidential. Or even a straight breach of contract claim if their terms of service or privacy policy promised certain protections they didn't deliver.
So lots of legal angles. What's the main goal?
Ultimately, the goal across all these approaches is to seek compensation for damages you suffered because your data was misused. This could be compensation for emotional distress, any actual financial losses you had, maybe even damage to your reputation if your name was used publicly in a negative way. And here's a really key takeaway for you, the individual. You have strong legal and ethical grounds to argue that you are entitled to a portion of that court award that was generated using your data without your okay.
Really? You can claim part of the money they won using your info.
The argument is strong. Your name, your data, was essential to starting that case and getting that award. Without your consent, it creates a powerful claim that you deserve a share of the value created from your own identity. It's about asserting your rights over the value derived from you.
That's huge. But this all sounds incredibly complicated. I imagine anyone trying to navigate this needs to keep some important things in mind. It's not simple.
Absolutely not. First and foremost, you usually need to demonstrate harm suffered. To win a claim, you generally have to show you were actually harmed by the data misuse emotionally, financially, reputationally. Just because it happened might not be enough. You need to show the negative impact on you.
Okay. Proving harm. What else?
Jurisdiction is absolutely critical. Laws vary wildly from place to place, country to country, state to state. The specific laws where you live or where the misuse happened will determine what remedies are available and how likely you are to succeed.
So location matters a lot.
Immensely, which leads to the next point. It is always crucial to get legal advice. Talk to an attorney who specializes in data privacy and maybe employment law if a union is involved. They can look at your specific facts, understand the local laws, and advise you on the best strategy. Don't try this alone.
Good advice. What else?
Documentation. Keep records of everything. Every email, every letter, every notice related to the unauthorized data use. And document any harm you suffered. Keep receipts, notes, whatever backs up your claim. You also need to clearly establish causation. You have to show that direct link. Their unauthorized actions with your data caused the harm you experienced.
Makes sense. Connect the dots clearly.
And remember, organizations usually have a duty to be transparent about how they handle money and legal matters involving people. Use that. Finally, think about reporting the data breach to your local data protection authority or regulator. This can trigger official investigations and might lead to broader action against the organizations involved, which helps everyone.
Wow. Okay. This has been an incredibly detailed and honestly a quite empowering deep dive. We've really systematically pulled back the layers today on how your name, which feels so simple, is actually this potent legal and financial tool inside these big systems.
Yeah, we shined a light on how courts can turn legal claims into valuable assets, how these promises to pay get traded around in the financial markets, and how all sorts of institutions, banks, funds are involved in buying and selling them.
And most importantly, we've explored how you, the individual, can not only start to understand these really complex systems, but potentially navigate them for your own benefit. Even in those difficult situations, like when your personal data gets caught up in it all without your consent, it really does shift your perspective.
So what does this all boil down to for you listening right now? Well, it means understanding that your identity, your name, carries this invisible, often untapped financial weight in the institutional world. The next time you sign your name on something, or just think about the digital trail your data leaves behind, maybe, just maybe, you'll see it a bit differently.
Yeah.
Not just as a signature or just information, but as a kind of key.
Okay.
A key that, in the right circumstances, can unlock significant value. And it's a powerful reminder that your rights, your control over your identity in this complex financial and legal world are far more profound, far more impactful than you might ever have realized before.